Hey, this is Peter and welcome to another Take a Break with Valley CAD. In one of our previous videos, we talked about the project curve and how to make a 3D sketch out of that, and then also using a fit spline. Well, what we're going to be talking about today is actually working inside of a 3D sketch in a little more detail, because a lot of times SOLIDWORKS operators that might be getting familiar with the software, they kind of freak out when they look at a 3D sketch as compared to a 2D sketch. So get your favorite cup of coffee as we learn something new about SOLIDWORKS here, and I'll see you in SOLIDWORKS in just a click. Hey there, welcome to SOLIDWORKS. So whenever you're coming in and making a 3D sketch, it can be a little daunting, and also many of you might also sit there and go, wait, you can make a 3D sketch in SOLIDWORKS? You don't have to use a plane or a planar surface? Yeah, it's really true. So where do we go in to create a 3D sketch? Where we go is we come under the Sketch tab, and normally you'll click on the sketch icon and that creates a 2D sketch. If you click on that drop down arrow below it, you'll now get the option of a 3D sketch. So when you activate a 3D sketch, it doesn't come in and say, hey, what plane do you want to use or anything like that, because you're doing a 3D sketch. You don't need anything like that. So when we look at a 3D sketch, it also looks very familiar to a 2D sketch. The only difference is as you look in your design tree on the left side, it says 3D inside of the sketcher icon there. So whenever we come in and we make a 3D sketch, it can get confusing really, really fast. Like, you get disoriented. That's where you want to use your 3D reference triad in the bottom left corner. So if you don't know this, your Y and X, that's equivalent to your front plane, right? Because along this axis here, that's your Y. Along this axis here is your X. Your top plane is your Z and X, right? So Z is coming out this way, X is going that way. And in your right plane is your Z and Y. So even though we can't see our planes right now, and by the way, if you do want to see them, you just simply right click on one of them and you say show. That's how you can see your primary planes. And by default on our system here on our template, I have them as turned off. So whenever we come in and we make a new sketch of a 3D sketch and we come in and make our first entities, watch what happens to my cursor when I activate the line command. So if I come up and click on line, you'll notice that my cursor shows a pencil icon, but it shows a little X and Y next to it. And also you notice how my origin has changed a little bit as well. My origin shows a red line going up and a red line going towards the right. Once again, that's why I was talking about your reference triad here. You'll notice how my Y is pointing up and my X is pointing towards the right. And if you notice, that's how my cursor says right now. It's saying, hey, you're currently sketching in an XY trajectory or plane. And so how do you switch between these planes? If you push tab on your keyboard, that will actually switch between them, and you can actually see how that's switching around currently. You look at my cursor right now, it's saying YZ, and also you see how the red arrows are changing as well. So why is this crucial? Well, if I come in here and I draw a line, and I say, hey, I want to come along my Z axis here, it looks like I currently am, but in reality, I'm currently drawing this in a downward slope that's on technically my front plane. So this is why we want to be able to come in and push tab several times to make sure that we are drawing on the correct plane. Now notice after I drew that line that those red lines that were on my origin are now living where my last selector point or the end point of my last entity is living. So this is also really helpful for as you are drawing things out. So I'm going to push escape once and I'm going to delete this line again. And coming in now, what I'm going to use is my center line. So center lines are great because they help you with construction. They don't go moving into the 3D world, it's just meant for a construction aspect. So let's say I need to come up straight, along my Y axis, and you'll notice how as I'm drawing it up, you'll see a little yellow square show up next to my cursor. It's the SOLIDWORKS way of saying, hey, you're traveling along the Y axis. And so if you click, you'll see here that I don't have a vertical relation added. Instead, I have a long Y line relation. So it's along the Y axis. Great. So now if I activate line command again, you'll see that it shows up on my origin. But watch what happens. If I come over on my point there and click, it moves that little reference to that last point like we were talking about earlier. So let's say I need to make this so it travels along my Z. So I'm going to push tab And now you can see that, hey, it's moving along my Z-axis. Done. So now as we look at this here, I'm now drawing a 3D sketch. I have a line that's going along my Y-axis and then a solid line that's going along my Z-axis. And also, you don't just draw lines in 3D sketches. You could use any sketch entity you want. So let's say I come in here and I draw a line again, and this time I need to go along my X-axis. So I'm going to push Tab until I see a variation of ZX or Y or XY. And so here I know I'm going to go along my X-axis. Now, once again, you aren't going to have vertical or horizontal relations on this. You're going to have along axis or on plane relations. So now if I come in here and I say, hey, I want to make this go back down, and then I want to make this go along my Z like so. So to make this in a 2D sketch would be pretty hard to do. So this is where 3D sketching comes in. Now, why would I come in and make a 3D sketch instead of multiple planes? Well, guess what? I would have to make a new plane relation or a reference plane in my design tree, and that's going to add more clicks, and it's going to take longer for SOLIDWORKS to rebuild the file. So that's why coming in with a 3D sketch is also very useful. But on top of that, as we talked about in one of our previous videos, I can now come in and add fillets along each of these axes here. So if I come in and activate the fillet command, I'll click on that point, click on this point, and click on this point. And I'll come in and I'll make so that these guys are, half an inch and give or take. And I'll simply say okay to that. So now as we look at this, we have a very unique shape that's going to be generated. So here I am looking from my top view, here I'm looking at it from a right side view, and here's how it looks from a front view. So once again, this is coming in and looking at 3D sketching and kind of getting familiar with how relations are going to work and getting familiar with pushing tab to switch along your planes that you're going to be sketching on. Now, one other thing to note here, that if you are having a hard time working with activating a line and you're not sure what plane you're sketching on, in SOLIDWORKS 3D sketching, you can actually make an internal reference plane. So if you notice on my Sketcher tab here, as I come up and towards the right next to spline, it looks like a little square there, right? This is actually making a plane inside of my 3D sketch. So when I activate that, it looks just like a typical reference plane that you would make outside of this, right? And so if I come in, I need to have 3 references possibly. What I could do is simply click on this point here and then specify on, let's go off from my front plane like so, and we can say it to be parallel, or I can say be perpendicular to it. So in this scenario, we'll just say be parallel at this time, and we'll simply say okay to that. So whenever you have an internal 2D plane inside of a 3D sketch, you know it's active because there's a grid that shows up on it. To get out of it, all you have to do is just double click off to the side. You'll still see the ghost profile of that plane, and to activate it again, you just simply double click on it. Now watch this. If I draw a line, it's gonna live on this plane only, and it will act like a horizontal or a vertical line for me. Pretty cool, huh? So we could come in and say, hey, I need to come off at this angle like so, and I need to make it so I'm gonna look normal to it, 'cause that's a really good practice to do when you are creating a 2D sketches here. So I'm gonna say, let's use that as a reference line, and I'm gonna come in and smart dimension this and say that this needs to come off at 40 degrees. And I need this to be at a distance of, let's say, 2.25 inches. And then from there, we say, okay, so that's looking pretty good, but you'll notice that this thing can still move around however I see fit. The reason is because I have not fully defined any of my 3D sketch entities just yet. So from there, we simply say okay again. Now, when I say okay, I actually got out of the sketch though. So to activate the 3D sketch again, you simply come in, right click and say edit sketch, just like what you would do with a typical 2D sketch. So if I need to activate this plane again, just simply double click on it and we're activating the plane again. To get out of it, just double click off again. So let's say I need to add a fillet from this line to that line there. Guess what? I can do that. So if I click on here, now there's that cool 1/2 inch fillet showing up again, and we're done. So now what we need to do is come in and fully define it, because having black entities is what you need to have no matter what when you make sketches. So I'm going to come in and create a line on this, and we'll say, okay, that's going to come up at 2 1/4. And then we need to figure out what our distance is from here to here. So you'll notice that when we do a 3D sketch, that it's giving me an aligned dimension. So this can be a little challenging for, I need to say this is a certain distance, a linear distance away from my front plane, let's say. Well, this is where you want to utilize your primary plane. So if I click on my front plane and then click on this edge, you'll now see that that is a linear dimension instead of an aligned dimension. And we'll say that on this one, we're going to travel out 2 inches like so. And then from here, what I could do again is simply click on that plane number 2, click on that entity there, and we'll say that we're coming out 1 1/4 on this one. And now we can look at this saying, all right, we're starting to see some good distances here. Now the next thing we could do is simply click on this line here alone, and we could say, hey, you know what? Let's make use of your based off of our top plane, like so, and we'll say go up 0.875. Sweet. So see how we're coming in and we're creating values as we are fully defining our sketch. So once again, this is coming off at a awkward angle there. That's not gonna work for me. So instead, what I would rather use is probably my right plane and this edge here, and we'll simply come off at 1 1/4. By doing this actually fully defined my sketch that I just created. Done. And you'll see here, once again, that it is adding great relations for me. A lot of these relations though, you'll notice that none of them have a vertical or horizontal relation on them. Awesome. So now we're done with that. We could use this this path here, come in with a features, and we'll come up with a swept boss base. We'll do a circular profile for this one. We'll simply do that, and we'll say, yeah, we'll make it so it's 1/8 of an inch. Say okay to that, click the green check mark, and there we have a complex 3D sketch that was created. So once again, when we're coming in and creating 3D sketches, make sure you are sketching on the right plane, not the right one, but a correct plane. And you want to push tab to switch between which axis you're going to be sketching along as well. Then from there, we also talked about coming in and creating a plane inside of a 3D sketch. All right, so if you want to learn more about 3D sketching and other advanced part modeling techniques, we do offer a 3-day training course called Advanced Part Modeling. And so if you want to learn more about that, all our sales team will be happy to tell you more about it when we have a future class coming up as well. These classes are offered in person as well as online. Sweet. So if you want to see some more 3D sketching, or maybe we missed a set of 3D sketching functions in this video, comment below. Let us know if there's other features that you'd like for us to go into further detail on as well. Also, if you are enjoying our videos, click that thumbs up button. We really do appreciate that. And also subscribe to the Valley CAD YouTube channel, as we are posting new content every week for you. Sweet. So hopefully you enjoyed that cup of coffee or tea. Have a great rest of the day, and make sure you learn something new.